Hello. We're going to go ahead and start. We have an issue with our speaker for the evening. He was supposed to appear on Zoom, but he has a power outage. So we've got his slides, and he's going to be talking on the phone, so you'll be able to hear him. But he also has limited battery, so we're going to let him go first before the rest of our meeting, and see how that all works out. So I'm pleased to introduce our speaker for tonight, Jeff Miller, a professional conservationist and a passionate advocate for wildlife. He's the founder and executive director of Alameda Creek Alliance and a senior conservation advocate with the Center for Biological Diversity. He's also the author of a new book, Bay Area Wildlife, an Irreverent Guide, full of wonderful information about the wildlife species that live in the Bay Area, and my favorite part, the locations where you're most likely to spot them. We'll have a drawing after the meeting tonight to give away 3 signed copies of the book. And even if you don't win, you'll want to get a copy of the book so you can regale your friends and family, or in my case, my 8-year-old grandson, with tidbits like how the burp of a male elephant seal can be heard for over a mile. And with that, please join me in welcoming the irreverent naturalist himself, Jeff Miller.
All right, thank you, Pam. Can you guys hear me okay?
Yes, we can hear you fine. I have to get your slides up though. So
okay. And sorry about the technical challenge, everyone. The worst timing for a power outage. I was hoping to join you over Zoom, but I'll just tell you, if I was on Zoom, you'd see my very long white beard is probably mostly what you'd be seeing. So, all right.
Your slides are showing.
Let me know when you're ready with the first slide.
We're ready.
Okay, great. All right, well, thank you for the introduction, and thank you very much, Sustainable Rossmoor, for hosting, and thanks to everyone who is tuning in tonight. My new book is Bay Area Wildlife, an Irreverent Guide. And I'll just confess up front that I am not a professional biologist. I'm an amateur naturalist, but I am a wildlife enthusiast. And I have about a quarter-century of experience as a professional wildlife advocate. I've been spearheading conservation efforts and campaigns for dozens of iconic Bay Area wildlife species, such as foothill yellow-legged frogs, green sturgeon, burrowing owls, tule elk, delta smelt, golden eagles, Alameda whip snakes, and more. And a little bit about my background: I grew up in the East Bay, and I've also spent more than 50 years exploring the Bay Area while bicycling, running, hiking and kayaking, and bushwhacking, and most thoroughly as a hardcore birder, which takes you to some interesting places such as remote marshes and sewage treatment ponds. All right, slide number 2. So the times we're in right now require a little bit of a political preamble because we are in an era of unprecedented attacks by Trump and the Republicans on all of our environmental laws and on public lands. They're literally taking a wrecking ball as we speak to our conservation laws and trying to sell off our public lands. Just today, we heard that our federal environmental reviews have been gutted so that they can log, drill, mine, frack, and develop our public lands with impunity. If we do not stop them, they're going to destroy the best of our public lands and wildlife habitat. And we are even in an era where there's attempts to criminalize protest and advocacy itself. So now is a very good time to speak up. Okay, enough depressing topics. Let's talk about what you probably came here for, which I believe is salacious stories of animal sex, murder, and mayhem. Next slide, number 3. All right, so what is this book? It is a watchable wildlife guide for the greater San Francisco Bay Area. It covers the 9 counties ringing the Bay, plus nearby places of interest in the Delta and south along the coast down to Monterey Bay. It's got 55 chapters covering more than 100 native wildlife species, from furry mammals to blubbery marine creatures and critters that are feathery, scaly, or slithery, and even a few invertebrates such as monarch butterflies and nudibranchs. So this is a practical guidebook. It's going to tell you where, when, and how to encounter the Bay Area's most interesting and unusual fauna. And I picked creatures that are iconic, endemic, meaning they only exist here, or have dramatic behavior or stunning congregations. These are my charismatic animal ambassadors that introduce readers to our ecoregion and hopefully spark interest in Bay Area nature and conservation. And I wrote it as if we're sitting around a campfire and I'm telling you a story, trying to convince you to go see and connect with a special animal or make a pilgrimage to view an unusual natural phenomenon. Trust me, this summer you're going to want to witness the flyout of 250,000 bats from Yolo Bypass. And this fall, you absolutely must experience the tornado vortex of 30,000 boxes swifts pouring themselves down a huge chimney in San Rafael. Next slide, number 4. You still hear me okay?
Yeah,
Yep. Okay.
I'm sorry.
All right. All right. So slide 4. So what inspired me to write this book? Basically, I've spent my entire life falling in love with the natural world of the Bay Area, and most of my adult life fighting to protect it. So this book is my love letter to the Bay Area region. The book's illustrator is eco-philosopher Obi Kaufman, and he noted that people protect what they love and they love what they know. People care more about animals and places that they have direct experience with. So my book is hopefully inspiration to get out to explore and connect with the Bay bioregion. The intent is to provide a better understanding of our wildlife neighbors and spark curiosity so people want to more fully explore their kinship with animals. Next slide, number 5. So why irreverent? Well, if you meet me, you'll see I'm a pretty irreverent guy, but I wanted a wildlife guide that was as if Ursula Gwynn and Hunter S. Thompson had collaborated on it. Something informative, but also interesting, amusing, and engaging. And I also wanted to delve a bit into the personalities of the critters that I cover. A lot of conservation work is advanced through just mind-numbing legal filings and dry, stilted writing in peer-reviewed ecology papers. But the general public is never going to read those. And as humans, we respond to interesting stories. So this is your antidote to dry nature tomes. And I think my mom gave the best review of my book, called it The Blazing Saddles of Wildlife Guides. And actually, there is a lot of reverence in the book for the animals and for nature. I personally have a nature-based spirituality, and I want people to revere these animals as neighbors and kin, as relations. So if you'll indulge me, I'd like to start off by reading from the book about one of my favorite birds, the loggerhead shrike. Next slide, number 6. All right, loggerhead shrike, the butcher bird. Behold the butcher bird, a compact black mass killer that only weighs as much as 2 AA batteries and belies its small stature with an outsized murderous habit of impaling its prey on spikes. Its predatory nature is unusual for a songbird, earning the loggerhead shrike the title of honorary raptor. Where shrikes hunt the grasslands, small animals end their lives skewered onto thorns or barbed wire fences. Their barbarous behavior is aided by a sharply hooked bill with cutting edges and notches called tomial teeth, used for severing the spinal cords of their victims with a precision bite to the nape. Because they lack large talons for grasping or tearing, shrikes resort to impaling insects, lizards, small mammals, or tiny birds for easy dining or to save for later. Thus the nicknames butcher bird or thorn bird. Caches of speared food come in handy for shrikes during breeding season when they need extra energy or in winter when prey is scarce. An industrious strike can turn a barbed wire fence into a gruesome art installation. I call this one Still Life with Lizard, and my latest work over there is Mouse Decomposing. So some good places to find shrikes in the East Bay. Del Valle Regional Park is a good place in Contra Costa County. You can try at Big Break Regional Shoreline in Oakley, Bethel Island in the Delta, Black Diamond Mines Regional Preserve in Antioch, and Round Valley Regional Preserve in Brentwood, and also at Los Vaqueros Reservoir and Watershed. Next slide, number 7. And I strongly encourage you to check out the Death on the Plains website. It's a photo essay of loggerhead shrike food caches from the plains in Colorado, just showing an incredible array of everything from lizards and beetles to snakes and small birds and mammals that shrikes have impaled. All right, how are we doing? Everyone still hear me okay?
Yeah, we're good.
Okay, great. Let's go on to next slide, number 8. Be a badger. All right, so the Bay Area hosts some amazing watchable wildlife and congregations of critters, and here's what's on tap in the Bay Area for your summer wildlife excursions. We're going to start with badgers. and I'm urging you to get out into our grasslands and see if you can find one of our more elusive mammals, the American badger. So what exactly is a badger? Well, if you start with a skunk, juice it up on steroids, add some wicked claws, and then hybridize it with a tank, that's a pretty good approximation of a badger. They are denizens of open grasslands with sandy soils. They're one of the fastest digging animals on planet Earth, essentially rototillers with fur. They use their powerful bodies, shovel-like paws, and huge strong claws to unearth and ambush ground squirrels and gophers. Badgers are a keystone species for the health of grassland ecosystems. Their digging activity helps in soil development, and their abandoned burrows shelter other wildlife such as foxes, skunks, burrowing owls, California tiger salamanders, and California red-legged frogs. Far from being a bother, badgers help control rodent populations, kill venomous snakes, eat insects, and clean up carrion. Badgers, unfortunately, are declining in the Bay Area as they are throughout California, and they're listed as a state species of concern. This is because they require large areas of grassland habitat and are quickly eliminated when their home range is fragmented by houses, malls, farms, and roads. An unfortunate number of badgers also become roadkill on our roads, and the use of rodent poisons is a double whammy for badgers. It both eliminates their prey and subjects them to secondary poisoning. Many people have no idea that badgers live in the Bay Area, and this is a win for badgers, which tend to avoid humans and just want to be left alone to snooze in their burrows, waddle around, engage in some recreational rototilling, and snack on gophers. So if you do go searching for these creatures, temper your expectations, because even in prime badger habitat, you're more likely to see their diggings than the actual creature. You can find badgers in the Bay Area spring through fall, but they're much more detectable in the summer when young badgers are dispersing. Your best opportunity is to head out to Point Reyes National Seashore, and if you really want to up your odds, you can book a safari with Point Reyes Safaris. Some expert guides who can also get you on bobcats, coyotes, foxes, maybe even a long-tailed weasel or a mountain lion. So badgers disappeared from Mount Diablo by the 1970s before the state park was created, likely due to poisoning of ground squirrels by ranchers. But they've been making a slow comeback around the mountain with a few sightings since 2020. And some good places to try are Lime Ridge Open Space, Diablo Foothills Regional Park, or Round Valley Regional Preserve in Brentwood. Badger Pass Trail at Los Vaqueros Reservoir is also a good place to look. All right, on to slide 9. Our next slide, rattlesnakes, another summer critter to see. So the only venomous snake in the Bay Area is the Northern Pacific rattlesnake. And despite their fearsome reputation, rattlers are not aggressive toward humans and won't strike or bite you unless they're provoked or perceive danger. Most rattlesnakes you encounter are harmlessly sunning themselves on a trail or road. And if you use common sense, leave them alone, and just allow that nope rope to move along, they're not a threat. It costs a snake a lot of energy to produce venom, and they need to save it for their prey. That's why up to half of all rattlesnake bites on people are dry, with no venom injected. This probably won't be a surprise to you, but those statistically most likely to get snake bit are young, drunk dudes. And I hear having a mullet ups your odds significantly. All right, to provide some perspective, research shows that you are 73 times more likely to be killed by a deer in the US, that's by hitting it while driving your car, than by a snake of any kind. And those statistics include people who regularly gamble with tissue necrosis by keeping and handling venomous snakes in captivity. Rattlesnakes are equipped with an impressive array of sensory and chemical tools to detect and subdue their meals, which are mostly ground squirrels and other rodents, rabbits, and birds. They have heat sensors in the pits between their eyes and nostrils. They have chemoreceptors to smell prey, which are activated when they flick their tongue. They have enhanced sensitivity to movement and vibrations, which are detected through their jawbone. And then there's those bulging venom glands, which give their head that distinctive triangular shape. When it's time to kill, they deploy hinged hollow fangs that unfold and lock into place, delivering a measured dose of venom containing hemotoxins and neurotoxins. Envenomation not only kills a bitten squirrel or rabbit, but also stops the prey animal from fleeing due to shock and paralysis, and even aids the snake in digesting them. All right, let's dispel a few myths. First one, rattlesnakes cannot jump or leap. They strike by lunging 1/3 to 1/2 of their body length, and that's with or without coiling first. Another myth, adult Western rattlesnakes usually grow to 3 feet long, rarely to 4 feet. So your friend who told you about seeing a 6-foot rattler was likely hyperbolic or adrenaline impaired. And then You cannot necessarily age a rattler by counting the rattles on their tail. They add a new rattle each time they shed their skin, which can be more than once a year. All right, now the good stuff. Let's get into the salacious details of intertwining serpent reproduction, which involves aligning cloacal openings, wraparound pulsing, and paired external genitals. Paired is in two sets of genitalia for each snake. Snakes only use one at a time during mating, but it's always good to have a backup. The biologists have long known that male snakes have two penises, called hemipenes, with research on male reptile reproductive anatomy dating back to 1674. But it wasn't until 2022 that research was published revealing that female snakes indeed have clitorises. Yes, 2 per female snake. This finding implies that snake mating involves seduction and gratification. And unsurprisingly, it was female herpetologists who confirmed that lady snakes have pleasure centers, since male researchers have been unable to find the clitorises for, let me check the math, 348 years. That's right. All right, so rattlers are mostly seen in spring and summer. You are fortunate because you live near Mount Diablo State Park, which has all the rocky outcroppings and brushy habitats that support numerous rattlesnakes. Some other places to look in the East Bay: Los Vaqueros Reservoir, Briones Regional Park, Lime Ridge Open Space, Shell Ridge Open Space, Diablo Foothills, Black Diamond Mines Regional Preserve, and Morgan Territory Regional Preserve. All right, on to slide 10, next slide. So I mentioned bats. About a 1-hour drive from where you are is the Yolo Causeway, the elevated Highway 80 freeway over the seasonally flooded Yolo Bypass Wildlife Area between Davis and Sacramento. This is where hundreds of thousands of bats lodge themselves in the bridge's expansion joints, directly under commute traffic for their daytime roost. And I'd like to read to you from my chapter on bats. All right, bats. Cheers, skol, salud, and chin chin. Let's take a moment and raise a toast to bats, the planet's only flying mammals. Obviously, we celebrate bats for their ability to hoover up prodigious numbers of mosquitoes every evening. We should also be grateful for their decimation of beetles and moths, with bats providing U.S. farmers an estimated $23 billion annually in free pest control and reducing the need for pesticides. So pull up a lawn chair and pour yourself a beverage while watching the massive sunset bat fly out at Yolo Causeway near Davis. That's where up to 250,000 Mexican free-tailed bats congregate during summer months, roosting and hanging out upside down with their friends during the day beneath the 3-mile-long bridge. At dusk, the bats awaken to stage a mass exodus. They stream out from under the causeway in seemingly endless ribbons, disgorging into the twilight to join the evening mosquito hunt. Thank you, bats. Your drink of choice while toasting the bats should be a fermented cactus beverage, so you can ponder the magical relationship between agaves, long-nosed bats, Homo sapiens, and yeast. Because arguably the most valuable service bats have gifted to humankind is pollination of agave plants that are used to produce tequila. Margarita drinkers throughout the world should pay homage to Mexico's lesser long-nosed bats. Though they don't occur in the Bay Area, these bats fertilize the agaves harvested for tequila and mezcal. This bat species was formerly imperiled because of habitat loss, but recovered enough to be taken off the endangered species list in 2018. However, a boom in mezcal consumption has led to overharvesting of agaves before they can produce the nectar that tequila bats rely on. Do your part by purchasing bat-friendly mezcal, which is harvested sustainably and leaves flowering agaves behind for the hardworking bat. So the Yolo Basin Foundation offers summertime bat events from late June through September. They just started a couple weeks ago, and that's when the masses of bats are present. I highly encourage you to sign up for one of those. Another great bat spot nearby is Black Diamond Mines Regional Preserve in Antioch. And starting in July, so starting right around now through August, the East Bay Regional Park District hosts Bat Watch Wednesdays at Black Diamond Mines. And that's for evening monitoring of the pallid bats and the canyon bats that roost in an old mine tunnel. All right, on to the next slide, number 11. We are on to another summer creature, good summer creature, a couple of creatures, leopard sharks and bat rays. And I would like to read to you from my chapter on these two fish. Leopard shark and bat ray, eelgrass adventures. A simple Bay Area kayaking paddle can transform into a magical aquatic excursion once you encounter the creatures dwelling in estuarine eelgrass realms. Eelgrass is a marine seagrass that can grow into dense underwater meadows within shallow bays and estuaries, providing nursery habitat, food, and shelter for all kinds of marine life. Kayaking over eelgrass beds will give you glimpses into this underwater world and can bring communion with two enthralling eelgrass denizens, leopard sharks and bat rays. Drift quietly in your boat as squadrons of sleek 3-foot-long sharks with distinctive leopard pattern, black spots and bars glide and fin under you like streamlined torpedoes. Watch graceful rays flying past underwater, gently flapping their pectoral fins like birds. Enjoy their effortless grace and power as they cruise through their watery and muddy world below. Sharks and rays are both cartilaginous fish that navigate using specialized bioelectrical sensors more than sight. Both species have their mouths on their undersides and depend on their electrosensory systems to locate prey, swimming along the bottoms of estuaries and bays, scouring the mud and sand for shellfish, worms, fish eggs, crabs, shrimp, octopi, and small fish to hoover up. Leopard sharks and bat rays coexist and are often seen together, swimming through the safety of the eelgrass forests and congregating in shallow waters of Bay Area tidal salt marshes during spring, give birth to live young, and during summer to mate. Bat rays are so cool that they copulate while swimming along, the male underneath the female with synchronized wing beats. Both species are ovoviviparous, meaning the females produce eggs, but instead of laying them, they develop and hatch within the mother's body. The following spring, female rays and sharks give birth to live young, usually from 7 to 36 pups for leopard sharks and between 2 and 10 pups for bat rays. Bat ray pups are born tail first, with their wings wrapped around them like a burrito and their stinger encased in a protective sheath. Shark and ray pups eventually move from sloughs into the open waters of the bay, where they are vulnerable to predation by seven-gill sharks, larger fish, seals, and sea lions. And those photos are from research that's being done on leopard sharks and bat rays in the South Bay. So all of those were caught, tagged, and released. Your best ray and shark kayaking adventures in the Bay Area, you're going to want to head to Drake Sestero in Point Reyes National Seashore, or if you want to go a little further afield, go down to Elkhorn Slough in Monterey County. You'll have your fill of these fish. And then locally in Contra Costa County, you can seasonally see bat rays spring and summer from shore at Point Pinole Regional Shoreline. All right, the last of our summer denizens. And next slide, number 12, we should be on the yellow-billed magpie.
Yep.
All right, and I'd like to read to you from my magpie chapter. All right, yellow-billed magpie, a tiding of iridescence. No offense to the adorably plump and snazzy-looking California quail, but the Golden State's designated state bird should be changed to the yellow-billed magpie. This avian denizen of open oak woodland and grassy oak savannas is endemic to California. While this magpie is the only bird species found exclusively within our state's boundaries, California quail have a range spanning 7 states and 3 countries. Yellow-billed magpies are gorgeous, with a tuxedo pattern of black and white, flashy iridescence in their wings, bright yellow beaks, and impossibly long tails. These flashy birds will hop enthusiastically along the ground to run down insects or other prey. They mostly eat bugs and acorns, but are not above making a meal of trash or roadkill. Famed local natural historian Malcolm Margolin perfectly captured the essence of magpies that pass through a Sonoma campground in the morning to check for food in the garbage cans. Quote, "Their elegance is almost embarrassing. It's like having members of the Metropolitan Opera Orchestra in full dress searching through your leftovers." Magpies are clamorous and highly social, foraging in large flocks and nesting in colonies. They're members of the corvid family, relatives of crows and jays, so it's no surprise that they're brash and gregarious. A congregation of these birds is called a tiding of magpies. Among their social behaviors, magpies hold a sort of funeral when one of their own is found dead, calling to attract others to the scene. Up to 40 magpies have been observed gathered around their dearly departed, chattering loudly for 10 to 15 minutes before dispersing. Communalist magpies construct their nests in proximity to each other, creating colonies of distinctively domed, loosely woven stick nests about 50 feet off the ground in groves of sycamore, cottonwood, or oak trees. Territorial disputes between 2 magpies are resolved by a comical and exaggerated parallel walk side by side along their territory boundary. This can end with a tail up display thrown in for good measure, the avian equivalent of flipping your neighbor the bird. Gangs of troublemaker young magpies will invade established nesting territories in the spring to test the boundaries and defenses of breeding pairs and to see if they can take over a prime breeding location. After nesting season is over, yellow-billed magpies still want to hang out with the crowd and may form nightly roosts of 50 or more birds. Groups of magpies will also gather to scold, dive bomb, and mob a potential predator such as an owl, raptor, or bobcat. All right, on to the next slide, number 13. Still coming through okay?
Yep, you're good.
All right. So perhaps the most important part of my book is the conservation message throughout. I'm just one of many who are warning about the loss of biological diversity. And the San Francisco Bay Area has been identified as one of the nation's 6 most important biodiversity hotspots. We're wealthy in a variety of plants, animals, and ecotypes, but they're facing numerous severe threats. As the human population of the Bay Area continues to explode, we're at nearly 8 million people now. Rural development is rapidly eliminating and fragmenting our remaining wildlands and habitat for imperiled species. I offer up stories about our animal neighbors as parables for the Anthropocene. The Anthropocene, of course, being the current period during which human activity has completely altered the climate, the environment, and much of the Earth's landscapes. The late E.O. Wilson, a renowned scientist and myrmecologist, that's the study of ants, known as the father of biodiversity, repeatedly warned us that if we don't turn the tide, the upcoming biological age could be known as the Aramezoic era, or the age of loneliness, after the 6th great extinction wave leaves our planet depaupered of biodiversity due to human activities. And yes, in this scenario, we humans are the metaphorical meteorite. A swelling chorus of scientists and experts is ringing out the ominous prediction that at least 1 million species on our planet could be lost to the extinction crisis within our lifetimes. Next slide, number 14. I highlight a trio of endemic Bay Area species that have been lost to extinction. The first is the Berkeley kangaroo rat, an endearing little critter that hopped around on long, powerful hind legs, had a lengthy tail with a tufted tip, and stored seeds in furry little cheek pouches. It lived only in the Oakland Berkeley Hills east to Mount Diablo. The entire species was wiped out by 1940 due to poisons ranchers spread for ground squirrels, rural development, and predation by feral cats. Less cuddly, but just as ecologically essential was the sooty crayfish, a small freshwater crustacean, once common enough to be harvested for Bay Area food markets. It was displaced by introduced non-native crayfish and was gone by the early 1900s. And then in the upper right, the Xerces blue butterfly, which lived only in coastal sand dunes of the Sunset District in western San Francisco and depended on lupins and other native host plants. It was wiped out by development, and the last individual was seen in 1942. Next slide, number 15. And I ask readers to remember animals that have been extirpated from our region, charismatic megafauna that used to roam the Bay Area, such as the grizzly bear, whose ghost still haunts the Golden State. The last East Bay grizzly was shot in Strawberry Canyon below Grizzly Peak in the 1860s. The last grizzly in California was shot in 1922. The closest grizzlies now are in Idaho, but it's still on the state flag and memorialized by local names such as Grizzly Peak and the bear statues everywhere at UC Berkeley. Now, a century after its disappearance, people are insisting that grizzly bears should return, and the California Grizzly Alliance and native tribes are advocating for reintroduction grizzlies to historic remote habitats in California, such as the High Sierras. Next slide, number 16. So gray wolves, this is some charismatic megafauna that aren't waiting for humans to act. They've been migrating south from Oregon since 2015. And at latest count, there are now 10 established wolf packs in California with 78 wolves from the Oregon border down to the mountains around Lake Tahoe and even one pack in the Southern Sierra. Unfortunately, ranchers are already trying to have them killed or removed. And I'm not suggesting that gray wolves will make it back to the Bay Area, but they could get kind of interestingly close. So we'll see how that saga plays out. Next slide, number 17, the California condor, the thunderbird back from the brink. So you got to show some love for the scavengers. They're nature's cleanup crew. And the California condor nearly went extinct due to mostly being shot by dumb humans and more insidiously from secondary lead poisoning from scavenging on lead-tainted carcasses. And it turns out that lead is just absolute kryptonite for condors. A single lead shot pellet can kill an adult condor if it's ingested. So the entire species was down to only 22 birds in the 1980s when they were taken into a captive breeding program, which was improbably very successful. And now there are 350 California condors in the wild. And the photo you're looking at is a condor named Marie Antoinette. And I took that photo at Pinnacles National Monument. And it shows you how close you can get to these amazing birds. So you can see condor flocks pretty easily in Pinnacles along the Big Sur coast. There's a fairly newly reintroduced flock just east of San Simeon, and they were recently introduced into Northern California. And the good news is that the condor flocks from Pinnacles and Big Sur, a number of those condors have started exploring the Diablo Range the last few years. Up to a dozen of them visited this spring, and they've even circled around Mount Diablo, raising hopes that they will eventually roost or nest here. Next slide, number 18. I mentioned lead poisoning. I worked on conservation of condors for 15 years, and in 2019, we finally got California to ban all lead ammunition for all hunting activities. And this photo is a radiograph of a deer from a program where hunters were asked to bring in their deer after they got their tag and harvested it. And it was radiographed for them just to show how dangerously lead contaminated the meat is in the game that they're eating. And you notice the entry path of the bullet there and the absolute snowstorm of lead fragments and minute particles that are extremely toxic. All right, next slide, number 19. So my book discusses the best tools we have for wildlife protection, which are conservation laws such as the Endangered Species Act, which unfortunately is now under a pretty severe Trump assault. We have nearly 50 animals in the Bay Area that are listed under the Act as threatened or endangered species, but miraculously, not a single one has gone extinct while protected under the Endangered Species Act. But don't worry, water diverters and developers are working hard to try to ruin that stat. And then more importantly, I also covered just the breadth, the importance, and the power of local conservation groups around the Bay Area and try to provide ways to plug in. All right, so there's plenty of depressing environmental losses, but I want to switch now and end up by talking about some Bay Area wildlife success stories. And there are a number of iconic species that have returned to the Bay Area themselves once humans stopped killing, poisoning, or persecuting them. Let's go to the next slide, number 20, and you should be looking at some whales. So it's hard to believe today, but all of the Pacific whales were hunted nearly to extinction in the early 1900s. And industrial whaling removed an estimated 2 million whales from the East Pacific. And each one harpoon left, a science writer noted that each one harpoon left a hole in the ocean far bigger than the creature itself. So I talk in the book about how I think pooping whales could help save the world. And that's because whales are oceanic ecosystem engineers. They help perpetuate the building blocks of marine life. So whales eating iron-rich krill are releasing that essential mineral back into the ocean when they defecate. The iron in whale poop is fertilizer that stimulates growth of tiny phytoplankton. The krill eat the phytoplankton, whales, fish, and almost everything else in the sea eats the krill, and the marine web flourishes, at least until modern humans enter the picture. Plus, whales are trying to do their part for fighting climate change because each whale, when they die, is a massive carbon sink that sinks to the bottom of the ocean and sequesters that carbon. So we are very lucky off the Bay Area coast. We have 3 species of whales that are easy to see. We have blue whales, the largest animals to ever live on Earth, reaching up to 90 feet long and 300,000 pounds. That's the weight of a herd of 15 to 20 elephants. All of our whales are on the road to recovery. There are now an estimated 1,500 blue whales off the Pacific coast, about 2,400 humpback whales off of California and Oregon, and about 20,000 gray whales in the Central California population alone. And you can easily see whales up close and personal just offshore if you take a boat trip out of San Francisco, Bodega Bay, Half Moon Bay, or Monterey Bay. All right, let's move to the next slide, number 21, bald eagles. And I guess we got to talk about bald eagles, charismatic megafauna. Us birders sometimes get jaded about bald eagles and other charismatic species that get all the attention. You know, meanwhile, we're trying to identify some obscure, unidentifiable brown flycatcher while everyone else is looking at the bald eagles. So bald eagles, everyone knows, like to steal fish from osprey and drive smaller birds off of carcasses, which technically makes them a kleptoparasite, which is an ecological description that doesn't quite have the noble ring that national myths are made of. And I talk about how this bird might be an unintentionally apt totem for America, a nation that's built on theft of land from Native Americans and theft of labor from African slaves. Not the eagle's fault, though. And fortunately, bald eagles are back from the brink, mostly after the ban of the pesticide DDT, which caused eggshell thinning and nesting failures, the passage of the Bald and Golden Eagle Protection Act, and a brief stint being protected under the Endangered Species Act. So there are now an estimated 40 to 50 breeding pairs of bald eagles in the greater Bay Area, and they're very easy to see, especially in the winter, if you just head to your nearest reservoir. So they're regular visitors to some Contra Costa reservoirs like Los Vaqueros, San Pablo, Briones, Lafayette, and the Clifton Court forebay. All right, on to the next slide, number 22, peregrine falcons, the screaming death parrots. So peregrines were also a DDT victim, and by the 1970s, there were only 2 nesting pairs remaining in all of California. We were calling peregrine falcons a success story. We had gotten back up to about 50 breeding pairs in the greater San Francisco Bay Area, but unfortunately, just starting within the last 6 months or so, the avian flu now seems to be taking out the Bay Area's peregrines, unfortunately. So peregrines have been called feathered fighter jets due to their 200-mile-per-hour stoop, which makes them the planet's fastest animal, and the effective way they dispatch small to medium-sized birds. On the bottom, you can see that photo. That's a death parrot that I watched attack, kill, and eat that western gull, which is a bird much larger and heavier than itself. And that photo was taken at the very instant when it bit through the nape of that gull and ended its life and turned it into a meal. So for peregrines, their black hood definitely adds to the executioner vibe. And the reason I call peregrine falcon the screaming death parrot is that genetic evidence that was published in 2014 suggests that falcons are actually more closely related to parrots than they are to hawks. So they have a lot of similarities, falcons and hawks, but those are due to convergent evolution. In fact, falcon and hawk lineages evolved separately after the breakup of the Gondwana supercontinent more than 100 million years ago. Falcons evolved in South America and hawks in Africa. So from an evolutionary perspective, a falcon can be viewed as more of a murderous parrot than a hawk. And modern peregrines have evolved to use our cities and bridges as urban cliffs. Cliffs are a nesting habitat that's in high demand in nature. So they've taken over our edifices, and you could, at least until recently, find some pretty famous nesting pairs in the Bay Area. One pair that was on the Campanile at UC Berkeley, where they started nesting in 2017. Unfortunately, the Cal Falcons are missing this breeding season, and suspected avian flu might have gotten them. And then also there's a famous pair that was nesting on San Jose City Hall. So peregrines were reintroduced to Mount Diablo in 1990. They were nesting annually in the state park among the Castle Rock sandstone formations overlooking Pine Creek. And the access to view them was from Diablo Foothills Regional Park. And I just learned last weekend that they did not return this year as well. All right, and then in case you're wondering what that photo is in the upper middle, just when you get home, make sure there's no children around, and Google copulation hats or hump helmets and peregrine to learn how bird genitalia headgear helped with captive peregrine breeding and reintroduction. And I'll just say that birders are a weird breed, but falconers are even stranger. Strange but true story. All right, on to the next chapter, 23, coyotes. Still hear me okay?
Yep.
Okay, great. All right, so another critter that is kind of reintroduced itself. I call my coyote chapter Return of the Trickster. So the coyote has been the most persecuted large mammal in American history, but due to their resiliency, for the last 500 years, they've been continuously expanding their range in North America, and they've been colonizing new areas, even amidst settler societies that have been hell-bent on eradicating them. And coyote's latest magic trick is turning our California cities into habitat. So there are now several dozen coyotes living throughout urban San Francisco, pretty much in every large open space and green area in the city. and an astounding 5,000 coyotes living in the Los Angeles basin. If you want to see coyotes in the Bay Area, I'm sure most of you have seen them. Point Reyes National Seashore is almost guaranteed. The Marin Headlands and the Golden Gate National Recreation Area in West Marin are also good places, and Sunol Regional Wilderness, a good spot. They're common locally in Contra Costa and Tilden, Briones Regional Parks, and in Mount Diablo State Park. All right, next slide, river otters. All right, I jokingly label the river otters the aquatic death weasels, and that is due to the couple of West Marin family groups of otters, which are basically forming mucilage strike teams to work together to ambush, drown, and eat brown pelicans, a very large bird. And that bottom photo is from West Marin of a river otter towing a murdered pelican to shore, and I got to watch the entire hunt and dispatching and feasting on that pelican. So river otters were once extirpated from most of the Bay Area, but they've been reintroducing themselves to our waterways, and they're now expanding their domains around the bay. They're a good indicator species of water quality and the well-being of entire watersheds, since they can roam from the headwaters down to the coast. And their return offers a hope for healthier ecosystems. And despite the pelican mayhem, otters remain effective ambassadors for protecting and restoring our local creeks and rivers. So the pelican ambushing otters can be seen out at Rodeo Lagoon in the Marin Headlands and Abbott's Lagoon at Point Reyes. You can pretty much see river otters anywhere there's lakes or rivers now, at least in the East Bay. Lake Merritt's a good place. We have a new family in Lower Alameda Creek near Quarry Lakes. And then in Contra Costa County, they are pretty frequently seen along the shoreline and in creeks and wetlands along the Carquinez Strait and in the Delta. And then in Walnut Creek, river otters have been traveling along Walnut Creek and are sometimes seen in some pretty urban areas, including Civic Park and Heather Farm Park in downtown Walnut Creek. And that upper right photo is that otter group from, that family group from Abbott's Lagoon out in Point Reyes. Watch them swim up to their favorite sand dune that they like to slide down and just roll around and turn themselves into sandy otter churros. So they're pretty adorable creatures. All right, next slide, number 25, black bears, furry foodies. All right, so we are seeing kind of a slow motion ecological release with black bears in California. And ecological release is a population increase when a species is freed from limiting factors. And in this case, it's black bears that are moving down from the mountains to expand their range into lowland habitats that were formerly dominated by the more aggressive grizzly bears, which have been absent for a century. So I think the black bears are finally realizing they're gone, and I think it's safe to come back into some of those habitats. The black bears are quickly increasing their numbers in the North Bay. In 2020, there were 33 individual bears that were identified in Sonoma and Marin counties. And then just recently this spring, there have been several sightings in Jenner at the mouth of the Russian River. And bear experts say the black bears are likely to keep moving in the Bay Area, next into remote forested regions of the Coast Range, into the Diablo Range, and into the Santa Cruz Mountains. So we need to relearn how to live with bears and not do what a lot of tourists do in Yosemite and Yellowstone. All right, on to the next chapter, 26, Tule elk. So this is our smallest elk species in California. We've got 3 native elk species. There were more than 500,000 Tule elk in the Central Valley and the Coast Range grasslands before European contact. But they were decimated by hunting and displaced by cattle grazing, and they were presumed extinct by the end of the gold rush. Luckily, there was one isolated remnant herd that remained of fewer than 30 elk in the San Joaquin Valley that were sheltered by a rancher. And were eventually, from that one herd with only 3 reproducing individuals, they were eventually reintroduced around the state. And as of 2020, there were 5,700 Tule elk throughout California in 22 herds, with more than 1,000 of those elk in the Bay Area. And the largest Bay Area population is at Point Reyes National Seashore, with almost 400 free-roaming elk and more than 300 elk in the Tomales Point herd, which until recently was penned in by a huge fence. And I'm going to probably have to rewrite my elk chapter due to our recent settlement agreement at Point Reyes. I had excoriated the Park Service for their prioritization of commercial cattle ranching in the national park, and a plan to shoot tule elk so that private cows could eat more public grass. A number of conservation groups spent the last 10 years battling to protect the tule elk and reached a settlement agreement this January that will retire most of the private cattle ranches and all of the dairies and will allow the elk to roam and expand throughout the park. The Park Service also tore down a portion of the Smallest Point elk fence, so those elk are now roaming free as well. Unfortunately, we're now having to defend that settlement from the Trump administration, from RFK Jr., who's supposedly trying to overturn it, and from rancher and agricultural lawsuits. And I'll just say, if you love elk and if you care about keeping public lands in public hands, I strongly urge you to boycott Strauss dairy products and Nyman beef. Those are the two ranchers who are spreading disinformation about the Point Reyes settlement, who've sued to overturn the new management plan and are trying to reprivatize our public park lands. Other Bay Area herds of tule elk are an Alameda San Joaquin herd of about 100 elk and a Santa Clara Mount Hamilton herd of about 150 elk. And there used to be a herd at the Concord Naval Weapons Station, but they were removed and relocated when the base was developed a while ago. All right, and I'm going to close out by going through 5 critters that I think really need more help from us. These are species that I think we need to be proactively reintroducing, and those are salmon, beavers, sea otter, 4 species, sea otters, and burrowing owls. All right, next slide, number 27, salmon and steelhead. So we have 3 species of salmonas in the Bay Area that you can witness during their spawning migrations. We have fall run Chinook salmon, which spawn in November into December. We have, on the coast, we have coho salmon, which spawn December into January. And then we have steelhead trout, which spawn in the winter through spring as late as April or May. Due to dam building, logging of old growth forests, excessive freshwater diversions to fuel agribusiness and sprawl development, and climate change-induced extended drought, almost every West Coast salmon population is now depleted or heading toward extinction. The dramatic and perilous life cycle of the Pacific salmon features perhaps the most arduous migrations in the animal kingdom. Salmon struggle upstream. They have to find suitable gravel substrate for spawning to continue their lineage, and then they die. And this drama is a visceral expression of life and its will to continue. You can visit several Bay Area stream reaches to witness this ancient and inspiring cycle. Notably, Lagunitas Creek and Marin for coho salmon, the Russian River, particularly at a diversion dam in Mirabel Park, and recently Lower Alameda Creek in Fremont at our new fish ladder. And on the peninsula, you can go to Memorial Park to view coho and Pescadero Creek. Locally, we have adult hatchery salmon that are returning to Central Valley rivers that often detour from the Carquinez Strait to spawn in the urban flood control channel in Walnut Creek. And the best salmon viewing there is along a 1.5 mile stretch of the Iron Horse Regional Trail, basically from Concord Avenue upstream to a concrete drop structure, which is upstream of Willow Pass Road, that has been modified to improve fish passage. So during high runoff, salmon can ascend Walnut Creek as high as Civic Park in downtown Walnut Creek. And you can learn more about that from the Walnut Creek Watershed Council. I contend that salmon are the soul of our rivers, and if we allow them to thrive, these remarkable fish can teach us how to think like a watershed, meaning live within the limits of our local bioregion. Next slide, please. This should also be salmon. So salmon have inspired considerable restoration efforts around the Bay Area. Notably, Spawn's work to protect and restore salmon habitat along Lagunitas Creek and Marin. The National Park Service has been releasing hatchery-reared coho into Redwood Creek in West Marin and restoring estuary and riparian areas at Muir Beach in an attempt to revive the salmon runs into Muir Woods. There's been extensive reintroduction of coho salmon into lower Russian River tributaries, and I mentioned salmon viewing at the Diversion Dam viewing gallery. That's the lower right photo. West of Davis, the Puda Creek Council secured enhanced stream flows that had supported an annual run of 500 to 1,000 Chinook salmon, but I heard that has dropped last couple of years down to about 200 spawning fish. And then I've worked for almost the last 30 years with the Alameda Creek Alliance, kind of championing steelhead restoration at Alameda Creek and securing the removal of a dozen small dams and fish passage barriers and construction of 5 fish ladders. This has allowed migratory fish to access the watershed for the first time in 50 years. And those two photos on the left are of the new Bart Weir fish ladder. The lower one should be an aerial view, and the upper one should be inside the fish ladder. In the last 2 winters, since those fish ladders came into operation, we had Chinook, salmon, steelhead trout, and Pacific lamprey using those newly built fish ladders in Fremont. In the South Bay Clean Creeks Coalition is promoting Chinook salmon spawning in the urban reaches of the Guadalupe River in San Jose. And then on the peninsula beyond Searsville Dam, hopes to remove the 65-foot high Searsville Dam, which is owned by Stanford University, to restore steelhead access to 20 miles of historic habitat in San Francisco Creek upstream of Palo Alto. I will just say the recent Klamath Dam removals were a huge inspiration. That was the largest dam removal project in U.S. history. There were 4 dams removed by the end of 2024 in Northern California, freeing up 420 miles of former salmon habitat, and salmon immediately moved upstream to spawn past all 4 of those former dams. And the native tribes on the Klamath have been working to restore their salmon economy, and along the way created a really impressive river restoration economy and kind of catalyzed the dam removal movement. And statewide, the Eel River is the next important target for dam removal. There's 2 PG&E dams that look like they're going to come out on that important river. And locally in the Bay Area, I mentioned our sights are set on tearing down Searsville Dam. We will need to stop Trump's insane water policies, as well as Governor Newsom's proposed Delta Tunnel and the Sites Reservoir on the lower Sacramento River. That's 2 giant straws they want to stick in that system, which would divert even more water and pretty much destroy all of our Central Valley salmon runs. All right, next slide, 29. One of my favorite creatures that we should be helping out, the beavers. So why do we call beavers magical watershed restoration gnomes? Well, their stick dams serve up a smorgasbord of ecological benefits, from raising the water table to acting as a sponge for capturing and storing water. So unlike concrete dams, beavers' stick dams control water in beneficial ways. They slow down stream flows, they reduce the intensity of floods, and they improve fish habitat by increasing the base flows so that streams don't dry up as fast during summer. They also help stabilize eroding stream banks, prevent erosion, trap silt, filter pollutants, and provide fire control breaks. Beavers may be a key to restoring watersheds that have been damaged by human development, logging, and cattle grazing, and they work for free. So beavers were hunted to the brink of extinction for their fur, but they're slowly reintroducing themselves to waterways around the Bay Area. And if you don't know the story of Worth a Dam, the return of the Martinez beavers, you can read about it in my book or go to the Worth a Dam website. And they hold an annual Martinez Beaver Festival, which was held just last weekend, and it was a very good time. I highly recommend it. On the lower right there, I contend that we need to be parachuting beavers into every watershed in the Bay Area, and actually that's not a joke. That flyer was from the 1950s when the state game agency actually parachuted pairs of beavers into the El Dorado National Forest west of Lake Tahoe for reintroduction. And locally, we are now starting a conversation about potential beaver reintroduction among water and land management agencies, starting in the Alameda Creek watershed, but now expanding throughout the East Bay and South Bay. So there may be reintroduction coming to a creek near you soon. Beavers can be found pretty much in a lot of the streams along the Carquinez Strait and definitely throughout the Sacramento-San Joaquin Delta. There are beavers in the Kirker Creek watershed in Antioch. A good place to look is a beaver pond along New York Slough, which is in the 471-acre Cortiva Wetlands Preserve. All right, a couple more critters before we wrap up. Next slide, number 30, are sea otters, which need some help from us. So I label sea otters the adorable psychopaths. Yeah, they're cute, but some male otters have a tendency for violent mating, and there are documented otter incidents of necrophilia and molesting baby seals. And it's very interesting to read scientific reports where they're reporting on these behaviors in very scientific wording. So before you consider our species morally superior, let's remember the sordid history of human interactions with sea otters, which were mercilessly hunted and slaughtered for their luxurious fur, to the point that the southern sea otter was believed extinct by the early 1900s. And again, just by fate of luck, a tiny population of less than 50 otters survived off the Big Sur coast. And so southern sea otters have been slowly recovering since they were protected as a threatened species in 1977. And there are now an estimated 3,000 sea otters off the California coast. The Center for Biological Diversity, in addition to getting the endangered species protections for sea otters, recently forced some policy changes that will help southern sea otters re-inhabit their historical range in the Bay Area and Northern California. And returning sea otters to their former habitats is critical to restoring coastal kelp forests and estuarine eelgrass meadows. If you want to see the sea otters, you can see them offshore. You got to go a little south to southern San Mateo coast, including Año Nuevo State Park is a good place. And if you go a little further south and get to Elkhorn Slough, you can kayak among them, guaranteed sighting, also at Point Lobos State Natural Reserve in Monterey County. All right, next slide, number 31, burrowing owls. All right, our last critter that really needs some help from us. So burrowing owls are grassland sentinels that have been in steep decline in the San Francisco Bay Area as their habitat is paved over by development. These underground owls are a reminder that open space doesn't mean empty space, and one person's weedy lot is another owl's happy home. As late as the 1970s, there were more than 1,000 pairs of breeding burrowing owls in the South Bay alone. Now there are fewer than 25 breeding pairs remaining around the San Francisco Bay margins, and that's only in Santa Clara County and only due to emergency intervention measures like captive breeding and releases. There are about 500 breeding pairs left in the greater Bay Area region. That includes Solano County, Eastern Contra Costa, and Alameda County near Altamont Pass, and Santa Clara counties, but all those populations are declining as well. Unfortunately, up to 100 burrowing owls each year still get whacked by the Altamont Pass wind turbines, and ranchers are still killing ground squirrels that these owls depend upon as the excavators of their homes. So I actually wrote the first listening petition in 2003 when we initially tried to get state Endangered Species Act protection for the burrowing owl in California. But back then, the state caved to pressure from developers and agricultural interests and refused to protect the owls. We just petitioned again in 2024, last year, to designate, asking the state to designate 5 imperiled populations of burrowing owls as threatened or endangered, including those in the Bay Area. And in October 2024, the state finally made them a candidate species for state listing. And we will get a final decision on protection, state protection next year. So local places to see burrowing owls, you have the Antioch Burrowing Owl Preserve. This was set up to compensate for habitat destruction by development projects, and the city of Antioch established a very small 24-acre owl preserve in the grasslands adjacent to the Pruitt Family Water Park. And there's a few burrowing owls that breed here each year. You can also find burrowing owls in the Los Vaqueros watershed, around the Byron Airport, and along the Clifton Court Road entrance to Clifton Court Forebay. And there's also occasionally owls at Vasco Caves Regional Preserve. All right, looks about time. I'm going, next slide, please. I'd like to read one more chapter because I want to give some love to the invertebrates, which don't get enough attention, and talk to you about nudibranchs. So nudibranchs, hardcore tide pooling. Step with me off the edge of our continent into a watery wonderland just off the coast, where we'll explore a mysterious liminal world of tiny and bizarre sea creatures. During extreme low tides, the ocean retreats enough to expose the otherwise hidden aquatic universe of Bay Area coastal tide pools. Watch your step as we descend through 3 distinct tidal zones to visit with life forms adapted to a harsh environment of crashing waves and fluctuating water levels. First, we'll pass through the rocks of the splash zone, careful not to step on limpets, barnacles, or turban snails. Once we reach the intertidal zone, which the salty tide covers and uncovers twice daily, the party really starts. Behind forests of mussels blanketing rocky reefs, we'll find neon green sea anemones, scuttling hermit crabs, purple and orange sea stars, leathery-looking chitons, and tiny darting silver fish, doing the hustle back and forth as if their tidal pool were the Studio 54 dance floor. Low tide affords us a glimpse below into the eternally submerged subtidal zone, where larger fish cruise by and we may spot spiny sea urchins, big crabs, or possibly a lobster or octopus. But what we've really soaked our sneakers for are the flamboyant nudibranchs. Some louts call them sea slugs, but that doesn't do them justice. Marine biologist and nudie researcher Victoria Kentner pronounced nudibranchs the gems of the tide pool. Nudibranchs are shell-less marine mollusks with an aesthetic that could be described as Victorian steampunk electric boogie. Most of these fantastical beasts are only 2 inches long, and the smallest a mere 1/4 inch. They're often brightly colored, and some have alien-looking paired horns. The backs of others are festooned with feathery gills, sculptured protuberances, or otherworldly appendages. If these creatures are slugs, they're disco slugs dressed for a P-Funk concert. There are 3,000 known species of nudibranchs in the world's oceans, and luckily for us, about 100 of them occur in California's intertidal zone. They have whimsical names such as sea lemon, salt and pepper Doris, hunchback Doris, shaggy mouse, hammerhead dodo, chocolate aeoliad, and opalescent nudibranch, each one impossibly beautiful and more fantastical than the last. The Spanish shawl is an electric purple slug with a flaming red pelt of spikes. A Hopkins rose could be mistaken for a bubblegum pink bathroom scrubby. And a Goddard's aeoliad looks as if the lead singer's hair from an 80s metal band became sentient and flipped off into the sea. All right, next slide, 33. I encourage you to go online and check out the website Bowie Branchia, which posits the question, was David Bowie's fashion inspired by the nudibranchs, or were they inspired by him? All right, and last slide, please. So some last words. I'll just say I really like to highlight conservation success stories, but these victories don't just happen. Many people have to spend decades campaigning, educating, fighting, litigating, protesting, securing funding, and doing the hard and often non-glamorous work. So I'd say find a way to get involved, find your local groups, there's plenty of them, and bring your unique skills and talents to help out. My final two messages. One is loving the earth is as important as fighting for it and grieving the ecological destruction that we're witnessing. So get out there and explore and enjoy. And the second one is bring back biophilia, love of nature. We humans possess an innate tendency to seek connections with nature and other animals, and I sincerely hope that modern humans can rediscover their kinship with wild animals. About 80% of the photos in this slideshow were taken by me. I'm a pretty amateur photographer, but fortunately I solicited some excellent photos from professional and accomplished wildlife photographers for the book. And finally, where can you get the book? Please, please, please do not buy it from Amazon. So it might be a few dollars cheaper. Their predatory practices are going to screw over publishers and authors alike. So you can buy it on my website, The Irreverent Naturalist, irreverentnaturalist.com, where you can also follow my birding and wildlife field trips and talks. And you can order it through my publisher, Heyday Books in Berkeley, heydaybooks.com. And it's also in quite a few bookstores all over the Bay Area. So thank you very much, Sustainable Rossmoor. Thank you.
Well, that was great. Thank you so much. And I just want to say that the 3 copies we're giving away did not come from Amazon. We ordered them from the Irreverent Naturalist. So you can read it without. Do you think you can answer some questions, or are we pushing it with your battery situation?
Yeah, came back on in the last few minutes. I'm gonna try to jump on the Zoom. If you want to have your meeting business for about 10 minutes, and then I'll be on the Zoom to answer questions.
Great. Okay.
Does that work?
Okay.
I'm firing up the computer, so I'm going to jump on that Zoom.
Okay. So while he's jumping on Zoom, we'll do our committee reports, and then he'll take questions, and then we'll do the drive for the books. Okay. Okay, here we go. This one, sorry. Okay, first one is the treasurer's report. Amanda's not here, but our bank balance as of May 31st was $5,936. $120 we got from memberships, paid 70 in expenses, and have an ending balance of $5,986. Okay, so this one. Okay. Membership report, Adrian's not here, but we have 160 active members as of July 1st. If you don't know how to renew, you can ask and we'll tell you. Okay, legislative committee. And if the rest of the committee chairs want to kind of line up so we can move through this quickly, that would be great. So the legislative committee, several members met with Senator Tim Grayson's district director recently, so that we could tell him about some of the bills that we're following and we could find out what his legislative priorities were. We know that he's like the second largest recipient of fossil fuel money in the legislature. So we knew that we were never going to agree with him on that. But as it turns out, he seems to have a lot of the same problems we do about the utility companies. So we think that at least some of the utility bills that we're following will, he'll be an ally with those. It was a good meeting. The district director gave us 45 minutes, so we were happy to be able to make that connection. A legislative success. I know a lot of you with solar panels receive emails from the Solar Rights Alliance about all the bills where they're trying to take away a lot of the benefits that we get from having solar panels. And one of those bills is working its way through the legislature now. The worst part was taken out. It would have taken 10 years off our contracts, basically. So we would have only had the benefit of it for 10 years, and then that would be it. But what it does now is it still doesn't allow that benefit to pass on if you sell your property. So we're still trying to kill the bill. And our Assembly member, Rebecca Bauer-Cahan, did vote no on it when it went through the legislature. So we're grateful for that. And now we talked to Tim Grayson's staff about that, and we hope he'll vote no on it as well. And if you'd like to join the legislative committee, let me know. We meet once a month for about an hour, and you don't need prior legislative experience. We can train you. I don't know what I'm doing wrong.
No.
Oops.
Sorry.
Okay, Carol?
All right, I'm finally here.
We're still getting through our committee.
Well, we can go ahead and do
Yeah,
that.
go ahead and finish that.
So you can read the slide yourself. It talks about our film, which is on the second Wednesday of every month. This, not tomorrow, but the next Wednesday, it's going to be a very beautiful film that's also very educational. It's won several awards, both for cinematography and for editing. So join us in Peacock Hall at 7 o'clock a week from Wednesday. And where's the
next
advanced
one?
one?
I don't know. Barry has to do it. Well, she's got,
Oh,
what do you want to
sorry.
do? Do we want
Advanced.
to? Okay.
Okay, so this is a real billboard, and it's being displayed in Massachusetts, Maryland, and Utah by the national organization Make Polluters Pay. So I think many of you already know about the California Make Polluters Pay bill. Oh, what did you do? There we go. All right. If you don't, it's two companion bills, identical. One started in the Assembly and one started in the Senate. And they each passed their first policy committee hearing, and then got stuck in the Judiciary Committee. And Rebecca Bauer-Cahan, our Assemblywoman, is one of the people who withheld her vote and is responsible for having it not get through initially on the Judiciary Committee in the Assembly. But the bill has been saved, and it is going to be moved to January of next year. So we're working like mad to try to figure out additional ways to get pressure on her so that she will please vote for it. The bill will set aside money from the fossil fuel companies to help mitigate and make California more resilient to climate change. It's estimated that it'll have a fund of about $150 billion. So we're going to go to City Hall. I'd like to see a show of hands in a minute if you think about it, but it's a week, 2 weeks from today at the City Council meeting. We're going to be each talking for 2 minutes. There's talking points available on a piece of paper I'll hand out to people, or I'll send you in advance. And if you can't come, we really hope you'll write a letter. So if you contact me, which the email is down there at the bottom, but I'm also in the phone book. I'm the only weed in the phone book. So you can text me or email me, and I will send you the information you'd need to be able to attend. We're going to carpool, and or where you would send your letter. Yes, Brad.
I probably should know the answer to this, but will there be a Zoom option to attend?
No, they don't do Zooms anymore for Walnut Creek City Council. Yeah, so it's in person or by letter. We actually are having a lot of people do both. So they're gonna say their 2-minute blurb that they're gonna say, they're putting in a letter first. The advantage of that is that Rebecca Bauer-Cahan and her staff can see the written letter because it goes on public, online, but also be able to say something to the city council, and we will have a resolution. 3 of our city council members out of the 5 have already stated their support for the bill, for the bills and for a resolution. We just don't have the resolution on the agenda yet, but we hope that it will be in 2 weeks. So can I see a show of hands of people who think they might be able to come in 2 weeks? Okay, thank you very much. And if you haven't decided yet, just contact Carol Weed in the phone book.
Okay, we're actually going to go ahead and stop the committee reports so we can take questions for our speaker, and then we'll come back and finish the committee reports.
Hey there. Let me highlight you.
There he is.
Hi, Jeff. So if people have questions, I'd like to ask if you can come up to here, because Jeff Miller will hear you clearly if you speak here. It'll be muffled if you speak over there. So I know we had the talk a little while ago, but if you have questions, please come up here.
And thanks for the flexibility. Sorry for the
Oh, yeah.
technical difficulties.
Okay, we have our first questioner. Come on, Mark.
I really enjoyed the presentation. What caught my attention was the bird or owl kill at Altamont Pass. Do you see similar effects out in Rio Vista, where there's hundreds and hundreds of those windmills? I do think they turn at a slower speed than the old ones at Altamont Pass, and that may help the birds. I'd like a comment on that.
Yeah, I mean, Altamont has the highest rate of raptor kills of any wind facility in North America. It's just an unfortunate byproduct of where it was sited. It was pretty much put in the worst place for birds of prey. No, the ones in Solano County, there are some bird kills, but not nearly the numbers. I mean, it's orders of magnitude more at Altamont. There's been a bunch of interesting research at Altamont. There's been attempts to repower, so replace older, less efficient turbines with newer, modern turbines, fewer newer turbines with the blades higher off the ground, trying to get them above the flight areas of raptors. That does not seem to be working for burrowing owls and golden eagles. A lot of burrowing owls are actually colliding with non-operating turbines, and they actually collide at a higher rate when the blades aren't spinning. So it's not necessarily the spinning blades; it's the structure itself that and the guy wires, electrical transmission wires, those kind of things. So it's a very unfortunate situation in Altamont. It's probably just a matter of time before one of the condors that's coming up to explore Mount Diablo gets whacked as well. And I don't know what there is to do about it, except that was a terrible place to put wind turbines for birds of prey. Yeah.
I'll just say your name.
Hi, my name is Denise, and thank you, Jeff, for your presentation. I love a lot of your animals also. I have a question about the quail. You just mentioned the quail, and specifically with all the removal of the juniper here, is there any suggested replacement habitat? And in the meantime, what can we do to encourage quail to stay?
Yeah, I mean, quail are disappearing from a lot of urban areas. They really need cover. They like shrubs, they like tangles, they like thickets. And unfortunately, in our cities and our suburbs, we like to clear away unsightly brush. If you can plant native shrubs, especially things that will grow thick and allow them to, you know, if they're not a fire hazard, you're going to keep your quail around. They need that cover. Everything's trying to eat them because they're plump and delicious. So.
You talked about that one butterfly at the beginning, but I didn't hear a whole lot more about insects. Could you make some comments about what's being done to restore habitat, especially for monarch butterflies?
Yeah, I do have a chapter in the book about the monarch butterfly. That's a species that the Center for Biological Diversity petitioned for endangered species listing. We're supposed to get a decision on that soon, although we may have to sue the Trump administration to actually get that final decision. If you know, there were used to be millions, even tens of millions of wintering monarchs up and down the California coast. The entire western population winters on the California coast. We had more than 300 overwintering sites, and that population just collapsed to the point that by I believe it was 2020, we had only 1,200 monarchs in the entire state. They've rebounded a little bit since then, but are still facing a lot of threats. Climate chaos is the main thing. You know, they're highly dependent on milkweed and the timing of the flowering. They're also the timing of when they actually leave the milkweed plants to come spend the winter in protected tree groves on the coast, because of the changing timing of that flowering, and because of the kind of chaotic weather. It's actually one of the biggest impacts on them. And then of course pesticide use. The monarch is a species, though. You know, the public has responded by people are growing milkweed everywhere in their yards, at work, you know, if the proper milkweed, the native milkweed, is planted, it's actually helping monarchs. So I do talk quite a bit about that in the book.
Jeff, I appreciate your message about maintaining and saving biodiversity. I'm wondering, though, about gray whales. I appreciate your message of the increase in the populations, but I hear on the news about gray whales and finding, I think the report was about 10 gray whales found this year. And the report ended by saying that they hadn't found any which had gone into the bay. What do you know about this situation of the gray whale die-off? Or is it a die-off?
Yeah, it's probably too soon to say it's a die-off, but it is concerning. I guess there's some questions whether it's food source or you know, something else. You know, obviously we've completely altered the marine food webs. You know, our oceans are warming faster than anything else, and we do see, you know, some die-offs can be natural for a lot of species, whales, sea lions, seabirds, but with climate change and ocean acidification and warming oceans, and we get kind of more dramatic cycles and bigger collapses of food sources, and more severe die-offs. So that is a big concern. The other big concern for whales on our coast is ship strikes is one of the big things. So actually, the changing water temperatures often brings whales in a lot closer and into what are now, you know, industrial shipping lanes. So we've been the Center for Biological Diversity has been working hard to try to get enforceable speed limits in shipping lane areas where whales are where areas whales are likely to be present. So that's one of the things. And then overfishing and some of the other ocean impacts are also affecting whales. So, but yeah, gray whales are generally doing well. There has been, I think it is highly reported though when they wash up in the bay. So.
Thank you.
Okay.
Anyone have any other questions? Okay, well, I want to thank you for going through everything you had to go through to speak to us tonight. We really appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you. It was a pleasure. Sorry about the power outage, and yeah, glad it came back on, and really appreciate you guys and the work you're doing. And yeah, check out the book. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, we have 3 more committee reports and then we'll do the drawing for the book. So I think you're up, Bruce.
Okay, tree planting and preservation. We're staying busy. We have a small group, but a powerful group. And one of our projects that we renewed this year that we did 5 years ago was to plant acorns. We had a large number of people, some of whom are here, who collected them, and some of the same people and others who planted them. And we've had some success and some disappointment. You always have some loss of new oaks, and they're not all going to survive. That's why we plant 3 in each hole. But we ran into some other problems this year. One of them is they did a controlled burn where we planted some acorns and wiped out some oaks. And also there's been a problem with very high weeds, making it difficult for people to get back to them, to take care of them properly. And also that hides them. If a crew comes along to clear brush, they may inadvertently clear out the oaks. So we've had a lot of success, and we know we're not going to get them all growing, but I feel good about what we've done. If you want to see what it looks like after 5 years, go over to the Rotary Park, just near the tennis courts there. And if you walk up the walkway, you can look down both sides and you'll see about a dozen oak trees planted 5 years ago. Some of them are 12 feet high, if you can believe that. Wow. So we're gonna, we'll keep working at that to try to take care of the ones we planted. We're working on a tree handbook, and we've been working on that for over a year in conjunction with representatives of mutual landscape committees. And we're compiling information to help people who may not know that much about trees serve well on their committees, and also advise the MOD people here, to the extent they're listening, and they have been listening, on better practices on planting trees and what kind of trees, and dealing with climate change with trees and so on. And in that regard, we're also looking at some sites within mutuals to identify for additional planting. So we'll be taking that up. We're putting the information regularly on our website, and eventually we'll be able to put the tree handbook right on our website for anyone to access. We also write periodic articles for the Rossmoor News about trees. Patty Harrington is working on one right now. Thanks.
Thank you. Susan and Barry, are you next?
Susan?
So it's not often that we start a whole new committee, but we just did. So at our last meeting, we had Cadman Bear present on green finance. Many of you were not there. I'm looking in the audience. I'm seeing a lot of different faces tonight. So we had a very good presentation last meeting about how to do your credit cards, your insurance, your checking and savings accounts, your investing, all the things you do with money, how to do them with groups who actually don't fund fossil fuels. And it turns out that if you stop doing that, if you stop supporting the organizations that are funding fossil fuels, you can have a huge impact on slowing climate change. In fact, way bigger than anything else you do combined. So we decided, hey, we can't let this alone. We really have to have a committee on this. And so our purpose is to provide information and resources. It's going to be a different kind of committee. We aren't going to particularly have regular meetings. We might have some workshops to help people do this. But anyway, the first thing we did is we created a survey because we wanted to understand where people are with this currently and what information they might need. And we've already done that. We turned it around really fast because Barry did an amazing job of that. And he's going to tell you in just a minute about our preliminary results. We hope to get some more responses, but we did get, you know how it is with the survey, they're the people who respond right away. And then they're the people who are underwater with their email and only get to it 3 weeks later. So anyway, this is, the results are from the folks who did it right away. Barry?
Thank you. Let's see how many results we got. Okay, we're still at 35 responses. So 35 of Sustainable Rossmoor's membership filled out this result, the survey. There were 9 questions. I'm going to go through them quickly and then say what the opportunity is here. So most of us did not see the talk. That was the first one. Second one, 83% said that we should add this information on the website. And about, let's see, 55% have been intentional about greening their finances currently. So a little more than half have been thoughtful about that. Right now, let's see, yes is only 23%, a quarter of us know that they have a credit card is not from an institution that funds fossil fuels, or they're green credit cards. I don't mean to make this confusing. And about only 20% think about putting their money in savings accounts with an institution that does not invest in fossil fuels. The homeowners insurance, most don't even know if it invests in fossil fuels or not. So this is a great opportunity for us to educate our members and also have articles about this so people can be thinking about this. Number 7, retirement funds. 43% say that they consider green investments at least to some extent. I think that was a softball way of asking it. So the number might be bigger than it otherwise would be. Number 8, if offered a workshop, I would attend it. 17% said they would attend it on Zoom. And this
41.
I'm sorry,
I mean,
44%, I'm sorry. And let me go back there. I don't even know that other percent. Okay, but it's small. Would attend in person. And the last one, I would consider volunteering. Yes, is this little sliver here. Well, that's okay. I mean, volunteering is a big commitment, but we do need a few people to move this along. So those are the results. But what it says is there's a wonderful opportunity here to really make a difference by educating people. It turns out you can get as good returns investing in non-fossil fuels
Or better.
or as investing in fossil fuels. And the impact can be many times that of getting an electric car or being a vegan eater. So that's the opportunity. Can I take the question, or we're at 8:28?
Yeah, we still need Dawn's report
Yeah.
too.
Okay.
But if you have questions, you can talk to Barry and Susan. And
Yeah.
Carol is the other person on the committee afterwards, while you finish eating that food in the back.
Yeah, and if you're interested in this or have questions, I'll stick around. Okay, Don.
Thank you, Barry. I'm Don McGregor with Friends of Tice Creek. Friends of Tice Creek is a group devoted to advocacy for biodiversity of the Tice Creek watershed, which is approximate boundaries of Rossmoor property. And this, for the creek, is a very important aspect. And so when Jeff Miller was talking about salmon in Walnut Creek. He also mentioned the Walnut Creek Watershed Council, which Tice Creek is a part of. Tice Creek is a part of the Walnut Creek watershed. So we are involved with advocacy, and we are involved with water quality monitoring, and we are involved with trying to create a map to show where Tice Creek ran. So we meet monthly. We are going to be having creek hikes in probably the third Monday of July, and we're going to go along the Silver Dollar course, and at the southern end of the Silver Dollar course is a location which our water quality monitoring group found a nice, well, we believe it to be a spring, but that is an interesting source for where we will begin doing water quality monitoring, also taking water, sampling water from the area near the Securitas gate right by Waterford. And what we're trying to do is not just create a map of where Tice Creek is in the valley, but also the characteristic of the water in the creek. And the advocacy portion, can we go forward one? Oh, one more. So beside the scientific biological sciences, we're interested in the social sciences. And so we were at Earth Day, Jim Pearson, who is the unofficial or official archivist, he presented us with photographs which were taken of the aerial photographs taken of the valley, and this additional map which shows in this area a pretty good idea. I mean, going up here towards Las Trampas, up there is Walnut Creek. This orange line is an old historic, railroad line coming up from Suriname, with this being the gates. What this shows is primarily the importance of these tributaries from the West Valley coming down. So we have this is in the Dollar Clubhouse, and I really strongly encourage you to go up to the second floor of the clubhouse. There's a very good display, which is probably done very early on, but a very good history of the creek. So we're combining history, biological science, and some advocacy. And the bridges are going to be replaced along Tice Creek, and the Rossmoor Walnut Creek board is working right now on a single one, but we are hoping to create or to encourage that they include some environmental engineering, creating a buffer strip for filtering out the lawn chemicals which are used to keep the golf course green, and we recognize that's necessary, as well as to have bioengineering of planting trees as a part of the bank, essentially creating a park-like setting for the creek, and to give the creek some good recognition. So we will be meeting, we meet monthly, and we generally meet in the Dollar Clubhouse area, and we'll be having creek walks in July and August. And look for the announcement in the Sustainable Rossmoor weekly newsletter. Thanks very much. And again, my name's Don McGregor. I'm in the phone book if you'd like to get further information.
And now we need the raffle ticket jar and the books. Don was responsible for actually getting Jeff Miller to address us tonight, so thank you, Don.
That was a great talk.
It was great. It was a lot of fun. Okay. Okay, ooh, this is little. 507-5024. Oh, here you go.
5024?
Yeah.
Well, thank you.
Thank you.
Well, thank you.
Okay. Next.
Which one has the pin?
All right, 507-5014. Hey. All right, last one. And really, if you don't win, you should still get the book. It's a lot of fun.
Or steal one of these.
507-5023. Hey.
Before you get up from your chairs, I want to remind you that the name tags stay here. So when you leave, if you would be so good as to remove the white card out of the plastic and put the white cards and the plastic in two separate piles on the entry table, we'd be very grateful.
Okay, thank you all for coming, and please come back next month for our August 5th meeting, when our speaker will be Edward Clement Jr., who's the Executive Director of Save Mount Diablo. Thank you all for your patience with the technical aspects tonight. Thank you.
Mhm.